Well, I have the stripes on both sides of the car. I'll show you that. And I'm pretty much at a stop point with this process. I wanted to be able to put all this together, but since I had these problems with the headlight extensions, I'm not gonna be able to finish that. So without those on, I can't put on the lower valance. I don't want to put the bumper brackets on. I don't want to do anything else up front here. But I'm going to continue on with some of the other things. I'm going to show you something that I've worked on, and I'm going to go into some detail with the next part that I'm going to do. So the stripes are on, as I had mentioned, and you know, there's a lot of speculation as to how these stripes should be positioned, and I like the way I did them. Again, the 6.5 inches up from that body line, and I went with the top of the stripe. Some people will go with the center line of the stripe itself, but this works out really nice. You know, this car, as I think I pointed out, it gets wider here at the front than it is there within those two body lines. So it looks great. The rear section is angled like it should be, so the stripe goes around the side marker light, and I measured from the original quarter panel to get the location of that stripe. Now, I'm going to show you this because this car I had to rebuild the windows. Now, glass was fine, and this was the tinted glass, and we had all these new parts. So we had the new front bar here, the new latch mechanism, and of course the new attachment point on the inside. And I kept the original post up here, and I have the original mount down here. So right now, this window will open up like it's supposed to, and I think it looks really, really good. Now the thing is, when you put this together, there is the internal mount is right here, and what happens is you have to do this in sequence. As I say, you know, sequence is scored, right? So you have to get the top post on first, and then slide this in from inside and slide it up over this main post, and there's a little like plastic sleeve inside of this, and then you'll notice this really sticks through this opening. It's not behind it, and then the little rubber piece goes here that covers that up. So really it gets complicated as you do this. So what I want to do is show you the process of fixing up one of these quarter windows. Just add it to the list of things to do, right? Now, this is the original one from the driver or passenger side, and you can see it's all pitted up. In fact, the post itself was rusted off. The inside, really bad. The glass is fine. Now this little handle here, to take this apart, and this is the original latch assembly and the cable, there's a pin that goes through right there in this little handle. So essentially, if you look at this other one from the other side, you can see that's where that pin goes through. Now the problem I ran into was taking this apart. Well, this is its own problem, but taking this apart, because the post that was in the other glass, I actually had to cut it and drill out the center because the rust had swelled it in the hole. So not that this was savable anyway, but I had to cut off the post as seen here, and then drill out the center, and then I was finally able to get, well, I was able to get the nut off and drive that out and be very careful with doing that. There's also this piece, which is a washer resistance type of thing that goes inside of that handle, and the intent is to give it some friction, so whenever you rotate it, it doesn't want to flop around. The problem is with these newer ones, you can't, at least I can, as far as I can tell, you can't use that. So I left that out. Now the other problem I ran into was with these, the new pieces, when I put the pin in, because this is the new post right here, when I put the pin through, this thing was binding so hard on that pin, on this little groove right here, that it would not rotate. It was like trying to rotate this whole assembly versus the handle rotating on this post. So I did some modification to that, and what I ended up doing was taking a drill and I put it through the hole once it was assembled on that piece, and I gently drilled through to open up this groove a little bit. And this one maybe, I don't know, each one may be different, but that's what I had to do with the last one. So what I'm going to do is set up the camera, and I'm going to take this apart. Now, I know from experience, and the last one I did, it took some effort to get this off of the glass. Now, here's the instructions that come with the new pieces. So here's the front bar piece, and here's the new seal, and there's also a new seal here. This goes on the post, and what that does is it creates a stop point for your interior panel. So a little gasket goes there, and this is all Daniel Carpenter stuff, and I would recommend this. This is good stuff. So here's in the instructions, it talks about actually heating up this piece and basically having somebody hold it and you tap it off. So you got to be very careful with that. Once you get everything off, it talks about cleaning up everything, cleaning up the glass, putting the gasket in place, and then just pressing it in. And that's what I did with the other one, and it worked fine. So I'm going to set up the camera and try to take this apart and show you the process. Now, to start this process, I used my mallet to knock off the chrome retaining piece. On the other one, I had to do a lot more work. I could not get it to come off, and I ended up taking a grinder and actually grinding the edge of the support piece, or the chrome piece, to weaken it so that I could get it off. But this one came off fairly easy, so I moved on to driving the pin out of the latch handle. Once I took that off, I also removed that little wave washer that goes on the inside, and I attempted to break this nut loose, but it was not turning, and I didn't want to force it. So I put some penetrant on there, and while I was waiting for that, I decided I might as well clean up any debris or junk that's on this window. So just taking a razor blade, maybe some lacquer thinner, going over it and getting things loose. I attempted to take the nut loose again. It wasn't happening, and I decided I'm not going to wait for this penetrant because it's probably not going to matter anyway. And I just got out my Ziz wheel and I started cutting. Now in this case, I was able to cut on both sides, and maybe the extra heat, I don't know exactly, but it was enough to get that nut to break loose. So once I got that loose and took it off, now the other one I had to cut the whole post off. It was completely different scenario. You can see I'm knocking off material there, and then I've knocked out the post that holds everything together. So there's a lot of rust around the window there, the bolt, the hole where the post goes through. So I continued to use a razor blade, and then I used some lacquer thinner, anything I could come up with to clean up that stuff. And then I used this Mystic Cut compound to basically polish up the glass and get rid of any other stuff that was on it. Went over that a few times, got it nice and clean, and made sure that it was ready to go once I get everything else put on. This stuff seems to work pretty well. I also used it to clean up a lot of the stainless pieces for around the windshield and various other stainless parts. So I started doing some test fitting, and I know that these are made by maybe 2 different companies, and it's hard to say what the tolerances are. If they just decide that they're going to build it to whatever post they originally designed it to, there could be a lot of variables there. So I started to test it, and I realized that where the pin goes through, or where this punch would go through, it was hitting that corner of the cutout that's there for the pin. So as you can see, I'm trying to do some analysis here, trying to figure out what's going on. Are the lengths different? Is there something out of place? Is it made completely different? And I start measuring here, and I'm going to talk about more of that in just a second and demonstrate what I ended up doing to make this work. So you can see what I have a problem with. The original post, if I put it into the replacement handle and line it up the way it's supposed to be, and even with putting a pin in it to make it work, I can rotate the post, and the dimension there is And if I'm liberal with that, that's 355. This one can't even put it together because the pin won't go through. It's hitting the upper portion. And this one is at 430. So my thinking, at least at this point, aside from remaking something like this, you know, if you compare these drops, they look the same. They seem the same. If you know what I'm saying, like that's the same distance. But this shoulder is thicker here. Now on the other one, what I ended up doing was I actually took the Ziz wheel and I grooved this bigger here so that the pin would go in. I'm wondering if I couldn't take down this top a little bit to allow it to seat further in. I don't know if it's making, well, you know what? It might just be making contact on that upper face. It's hard to tell. You know, you can't see what the contact point is. I'm going to try something here. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to put some Sharpie on this face and this face. Put that together. And make contact. We're going to find out. At least we thought we were going to find out. Look at that. There's nothing. I can't see where it's making contact. It can only do it on these surfaces. Interesting. I am not seeing any indication. Let's try a different marker. You see a little bit missing right there on that top edge. Right there. And I don't know if I can see it on the inside. What I want to try to do is reduce the height of this. See if we can get that back in there. Because there's no easy way to measure this. Like, if I went from this face all the way down inside, that's about 370. But that doesn't help because I can't get a measurement from anywhere else except for if this collar is on. And that collar bottoms out. And that measurement is 640. Oh no, I'm sorry. That measurement is 520 from the face of that to there. And that wraps around it and doesn't make contact. So something is stopping this from going on farther. And I think I'm going to try to knock down this, because it doesn't make sense that there's a big gap right there. Doesn't make sense. I wish this other one wasn't so messed up. Okay. I'm going to play around with this and we're going to find out if I can solve it. So I was able to shorten this upper section. I ground down the face of the top, and I ground down this face here. So I don't know if you can see that very well. And what that allowed for was the handle to go on farther, farther, whatever. And it rotates nice now. The problem is that pin is still going to hit. And I took the punch and I tried to simulate having that pin in place. And what I found was that the groove here, the upper part of that groove, is shown. If I hold this up to a light, I can't do it for the camera, but the hole, when I put that on, you can see that corner through the hole. So I'm going to take my grinder, my Ziz wheel, and I'm going to knock this radius. I know it's really hard to explain this. I'm going to make that go away so that the pin can go through the handle. So I'm just going to grind on that. Basically, if I show you this, it's going to be grinding on that upper corner and try to radius that out a little bit more to make room for the pin. So I use the handy dandy Ziz wheel to modify this groove once again. There may be other ways to do this, but to me this is the easiest thing because I'm so used to using these kind of tools that I'm very comfortable with, or taking away material and not worried about damaging anything. So once I got the groove the width that I wanted it, I did a few test runs here. I also used a punch through there to make sure it's going to fit, and I move on from there. So I don't know how well that'll show up. That is the shoulder that I ground down and put the handle on where it's supposed to go. Come back and put this pin through, or this punch, and that should take care of it. So now I have to take this back apart, and I have to tell you, I'll be up front with you, when I took this out of the package, I didn't really pay a lot of attention, and I noticed later that it was missing a rubber washer. So this is the collar for the cable, and I made my own rubber washer out of an inner tube because you have to have that there. I don't know why it was missing. I went through, actually looked through the video and saw that it was missing. So now what I need to do is take this unit out of the car, back out of the car, because it's almost impossible to assemble this in the car. So I'm going to take that new one out of the car and assemble it here. Okay, I'm ready to put this together. I removed that latch, and this, you can look at it and see it only fits one way. I pointed this out earlier on when I did the initial install, and you can see this taper right here, and that's what interacts with the handle. Okay, so with that said, I'm going to put the bolt assembly in, verify my handle location, that it only moves on that plane, right? So that means that the post thing is kind of up towards that corner. Put my homemade inner tube gasket on because that's all I have. I don't know what happened to the other one. And then this, if we look at it, it kind of needs to go like that, so that it keeps the cable at the bottom, more or less. And then put the nut on. Get it started on there. And the cable is actually fighting me because it's bent weird, so I'm going to straighten that out a little bit. There we go. Ooh, don't break that. Now what I find a little odd, if I look at that, how that's going to sit. And you may have to adjust this some whenever you get back in the car, but that nut on this works out to be a really nice fit for the 12 millimeter. Now I'm not saying it's what they intended, but that's what it is. I'm going to make that snug. Yeah, okay. Take that slightly. Now you can see how that's going to interact together. Hopefully this little pin will do what it's supposed to do now. And this came kit with these screws, and that's for the upper mounts, I believe. I used a set of stainless screws instead. And so now this, assuming that everything's going to go as planned, right? So I'm going to just see if I can't knock that in there. It's sort of going. No stress. That's in. Now, as I said before, that little wave washer thing would help keep this from maybe moving a little bit. Odds are you're not going to open this window anyway. But when this is in place and there's tension on it, it's not going to move. It's going to be held in place. And I don't see it as being that big of a concern. I know that the original one had it, but there was no way to get that in there and be able to put this back together. So now I need to get this as an assembly back in the car, and I'm going to try to show you that. Oh, actually, I need to put this front hedge on. So let me zoom out a little bit. I want to make sure that this is clean, so I'm going to put a little bit of lacquer thinner on here and just wipe that down. Now this gasket, what I noticed taking it, I took it, the other one out as well. One end has a very subtle taper to it, and the other one is more square. And when you look at the assembly, it may or may not matter, but it could also only kind of fits one way. Just saying, the way this is shaped right here. And I just thought it was interesting it had that little taper, because I don't know if there's a subtle taper here or not, but essentially it's going to slide onto the glass and then go into the trim here. Other thing I noticed was this one, if we're centered up, this one ends up short on it. So I stretched it on the glass just a little bit to try to compensate for that. So what you're supposed to do is put this on the glass. It didn't say anything about any adhesive or anything like that. It just said put this on. And this is where it kind of plays out a little with that angle. Just some nice little accent. They could have cut that square, but it's made to fit the glass. So I'm going to stretch that just a little to try to make it fit right on the edge or the edges of the glass. And then I can set this up here and do a comparison and see how close it is, and it's pretty close. The next thing I want you to do, I'm going to have to turn this around, I think. You know, when you're pushing this in, you got to line it up on the edges. And what I did was I soaked it down with Windex. So I'm just going to spray Windex on this thing. And everything else that's on the bench. Line this up as best I can. And just push it in. That's it. So with that, I'm right on the edge here, right on the edge there. And this is basically ready to install. Okay. So I'm going to prep for that. And we're going to put this glass in, hopefully for the last time. So it's kind of hard to demonstrate this without having maybe a camera inside of here. But this bracket is going to go up inside, and there's two holes right here. And this is what holds the bottom of the window. However, to make that fit, we can come in from the outside. You got to go around this gasket, and basically it's going to line up with the opening, right? However, this post that's up on top, you can't compress anything to make that fit. Like you can't push the window down to get under this post. So what I did on the other side is I took the screws loose, and I was able to make this angle in the process, and that helped a lot. So I'm just going to keep those loose, come back in, get on the outside of this gasket, and then pivot this as best I can, and there, it just went right in. So I was able to pivot the post out and push it into the hole, and that's where that goes. So now I can tighten those back up, and that's going to line it up at the top. Yeah. Okay, so once that's established, this hole right here gives you some access, you could see, and then this goes around the post, and this is a tensioning screw. So like this will pivot pretty easily, but that screw is going to help hold it in place. So you've got to slip this around, and it kind of fits through this opening a little bit. And then get the bolts in on the inside. Might actually help to have an extra set of hands, but I think I can get it. And then tighten those up. Now I may need to do some adjusting. I may need to move this back some. Yeah. See if I can't move that post to the rear a little bit. You know, a lot of engineering went into this, and you wonder sometimes who sat around and had to design all this, because this becomes quite complicated. And in the grand scheme of things. Okay, at this point, you have movement, and the challenge now is to get these screws back up in the corner so that when this is ready to latch, you can rotate this down onto the latch assembly. So it's going to be hard to show you that, but you get the idea. Get those screws up in there, and then this will rotate over. Beyond that, the only other thing that has to happen is you can tighten up this, if I can show it, if I'm looking at it or not. You can tighten up this screw to create tension on that rod. So this will want to stay open. So it's up to you to get that adjustment where you want it. And then you have these little covers, and they go over that. So that'll cover up that. So you have to make a new hole here and here for this to cover up that mechanism. And that's it. That's all you got to do. Well, I want to point this out. I talked about that little rubber gasket right here, and I forgot to put that on, but I was able to take this lower piece out again, the bracket, and slide it up over that shaft and get it in place. So your trim panel is supposed to overlap that to finish that out. I also put in the rubber caps. So I think there's, it looks like there's going to be a screw right there that's going to hold that against that interior piece. I may look at my original pieces that I've left over and verify that, but I'm sure that's why there's a hole there, so you can have something to hold that in place. Now, I again wanted to have more done up here, and it just didn't happen. So the plan moving forward is going to be working on the replacement extensions that I have for the front. Let me show you those. So these are the extra pieces that I have, and you can see the car they were on was originally gold, or at least was painted gold at some point. Now these are in great shape. There's nothing broken. They have all the little tabs and stuff that are so important to have. So I will take these apart like I did the other ones and strip them down, start over, and hopefully be able to get the paint to work out on those. Also, I think I mentioned I started a video on this hood and doing the blackout, and I ran into a problem, and it was something I had seen but I never addressed, and I actually saw it after it was painted. But if you'll look right here, there's a little bit of a dip right there. And so I have a friend who's a paintless dent repair guy. He's going to come by and take care of that for me. I don't want to put filler in there, especially not now, but he's going to come by and work that up. Once that's done, then I can finish prepping the hood for the blackout along with the cowl. So it's coming along, and I want to say thank you for watching these videos. I know that I'm not an entertainer. I know that I have people that follow me that want to learn things and see things, and a lot of those are my patrons who support me. So YouTube does not pay me very well. I get it, but my patrons help me keep making these videos, and I thank them for that. But if you would, leave a comment, leave a thumbs up, share these videos, and let people know about my channel. I've been doing this forever. I mean, I've been on YouTube 13 years, 14, 15 years, and my following is consistently growing, but it should be, in my opinion, 500,000 or more people by now. So I don't know what's going on, why YouTube is probably, I don't know, in effect shadow banning me in some way. I don't know. But anyway, thanks for watching. There will be more videos to come on this car, and I will share them with you once I get those completed. So until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.